All right, everybody, welcome back to the Realty Rundown with the Nick Wise team. I am your host, Nick Wise, as always, and with my co-host, Nathan Schwartz. Today, we are excited to bring you an episode that is all about home appraisals. So this is a topic that can literally make or break a real estate deal.
That's right, Nick. Whether you're buying, selling, or refinancing, understanding the appraisal process is crucial. And today, we're lucky to have a local expert with us. Please welcome Kelly, a seasoned appraiser who's seen it all in our market. Kelly, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, a seasoned appraiser. Seasoned. I don't know if we should have edited that word.
You know, I was going to say something when you sent that over. You want to just give them my age as well, but it's been over 20 years.
So when is your birthday, Kelly? No. Wait, let's dip into this. Appraisals are one of those things that I think is kind of a mystery to a lot of people as they're going through this process. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what the appraisal is, who orders it, who actually gets to use it, who gets to see it. So can you start out just by kind of explaining what is an appraisal and why is it required in a real estate transaction?
Okay. First of all, an appraisal is not an assessor. I'm not an assessor. I'm an appraiser, so I'm not doing an assessment. I'm also not doing a home inspection, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But essentially, appraisal is just stating what a certain house is worth on the day I do the inspection, as is completely. So if I do an appraisal inspection and you're in the middle of remodeling and you've got like one of the toilets removed, my appraisal is going to show your house without that toilet at fair market value in an arm's length transaction. The reason or the purpose for it is so that the bank doesn't overlend on the property, essentially just to make sure that we know what the house is worth so they can make an appropriate decision for lending. That being said, I also do appraisals for divorces, for tax abatement. Sometimes a seller just wants to know what their house is worth so they can do, I don't want to say it, but for sale by owner, So there's a lot of different reasons that go into it, but the majority is for lending.
Mm-hmm. So it's typically a bank is going to order that appraisal. Is that right?
Yes. 9 times out of 10, the bank or the appraisal management company will order the appraisal.
Gotcha. Yeah, kind of back to the...
Sorry, Nate, I jumped ahead of you on that one. I know you did have something prepared on that.
Yeah, kind of back to the whole home inspection thing. So how is an appraisal different from a home inspection? Because a lot of people do seem to get confused. So,
well, for the most times, appraisals are necessary. Like you have to do one. They're not optional. And it's all about the value. Yes, I do look at the physical elements and I look at the condition of things. But for me, I'm just doing a walkthrough, and if I observe an issue, that's very different. Where a home inspection spends 4 hours at a house, or 3 hours diving into every mechanical nuance that I don't have that expertise in. So I have a whole page in the appraisal just limiting my liability for any such mechanicals, that sort of thing. And that's completely optional, the home inspection, where an appraiser is usually not.
Right.
Yeah, I know when banks, again, because it is typically the bank ordering the appraisal, there are times when they can waive the appraisal process in some regard, or at least waive the portion where you would need to physically walk through. Is that something we're still seeing? I know that was kind of a COVID thing because, again, who knew what was going on in the COVID years? Like you couldn't walk through, you couldn't even tour a home before making an offer on it. There was a lot of craziness. I feel like maybe there's still some of that left over, though, in the world.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the loan and, what loan to value you're doing. I certainly do exterior inspections or portfolios where they say you don't need to go into this one. I have a client that says, we prefer to do an exterior, but if you feel more comfortable with an interior exterior, I always prefer interior exterior because the condition is very important to the market value. So if you have let a place go and nothing's been touched or updated in 30 years, that greatly affects the difference as opposed to versus a house that you've completely flipped. And I can't tell this from the outside. Sometimes they've updated the exterior and I think, okay, there's something going on, but it's always just better to have all the data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say you're absolutely right.
I did have one transaction, I think it was last summer, where the lender actually waived the appraisal due to the buyer's financial status, which I was like, oh, okay. I mean, made it easy. I was like, okay, may as well. If they're okay with it, may as well. But yeah.
Financial status. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like you said, as we would call an LTV or a loan to value. So if that's coming in, they're putting down. I don't think there's a magic number for this. I think it's more like the bank and their processors making this decision, maybe the underwriter. But I've seen it before too. Like somebody's putting down 50% of this home, the bank is
Right.
super comfortable with that. They've got good credit. They'll probably at that point, give the option to maybe skip that interior more likely than they would if it's like obviously with an FHA loan. I don't even think that's an option.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how you can check the health and safety without going inside.
Yeah,
For sure. So what does happen if an appraisal comes in lower than the purchase price? And how often do you see that happen?
It depends on the cycles of the market for sure. So even last fall, I was seeing the market was stable. I would say it was still continuing to be stable, but the inventory had slowed considerably. So, or the inventory was back up, excuse me. So I feel like things weren't appreciating like they were. And I had a lot of people that, at least in a refinance sense too, thought that it was worth more than I came up with, and it does happen. It just varies. Sometimes, some years it's a lot. It's like 4 a month, which the percentage of that is maybe 15-20%, but it still stinks when it happens. I don't want that to happen, but I am objective and I'm protecting the buyer,
Right.
Well, that's the thing I have to tell myself. I'm protecting everybody.
right.
So
Yeah, really, in a sense. Yeah.
right.
I mean, you are. I mean, the bank is making this loan based off your analysis of the value of the property, right? Just because a buyer is willing to pay an unreasonable amount for a property doesn't mean the bank should feel comfortable making that loan. So you're
Right.
helping them both by coming in with an accurate appraisal. I mean, being on the other side of it, it's never a fun thing when you get that
Yeah.
appraisal back for your client and it's like, oof, we gotta figure out how to make this work now for both sides. But in reality, usually when I look over those, I'm like, well, yeah, it's hard to argue against facts that are staring you in the face.
Yeah.
So as far as that goes, when we're getting ready to list a house, we're trying to, at least I will say for myself personally as a broker, I'm trying to conduct an appraisal / market value, and I really want it to be done the same way, or at least very similar to the process that you go through. So without me maybe saying more of what I'm looking at, what are some of the key things, the most important factors that you're looking at when you're doing your appraisal?
So the first thing that I do when I'm looking for a comparables for a subject is the location. So I always, number one is like the school district. I stay within that school district and I look for similar ages, similar square foot, similar, obviously if I can have one in the same subdivision, fantastic, right? Condition is a big part nowadays because people are really putting money into their homes. I think that was a post-COVID thing. They did all the work during COVID. And so just the conditions have improved. But square footage, age, and location are the biggest things. Amenities, sure. But I think typical homeowners don't realize the cost to put in a pool and the value that we get out of it. We only use it 6 months out of the year if we're lucky, not even 6 months, please.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the biggest things for sure. Like as an example, if you take 2 identical homes and one's across from the other in the same subdivision, and one has a pool and one doesn't, and the house with the pool sells $15,000 higher, that's my adjustment.
Mhm.
That's what I'm going to subtract for that comparable, and that should be the bottom line of what my subject's sales price is. That's
Mhm.
called match pairs analysis.
Yeah.
Is that answer the question, or just go on a tangent?
That does. It opens up a whole bunch of other ones, I think, honestly.
Yeah.
For sure. And maybe you touched on this just a little bit, but how do upgrades and renovations impact the appraisal value? For example, does a newly remodeled kitchen really add that much value?
I would say it does. I would definitely say it does. Does it add the value of the cost of the remodeled kitchen? Probably not.
Right.
Like it's not going to go up $75,000 or whatever you've put into it. And you have to, maybe we should talk about over improving your property. Like if you have, let's say, a condominium that it's tiny, it has limited parking, and every single condominium in there sells around 130 to 160. You can't put $100,000 remodel into that property and expect you're going to get more than maybe 10,000 more than what the other ones have sold for. So there are certain things that would be an over improvement to put too much money in something that just has a ceiling. But the first part, what was the first part of your question? Sorry, what was your question?
That was more so just like, is
Oh,
there really a big difference between a newly remodeled kitchen and one that's...
Yeah, absolutely, though. It does, because I think I'm trying to put what a potential buyer would pay for something versus not pay for something. So even me as a consumer, if I'm going to go into 2 identical houses and one's remodeled, and I have to like it, it can't be bad, right? But if it's remodeled, I'm going to pay easily $5,000-$10,000 more for that house, of course, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's just common sense. I mean, you might have a different generation where they really don't care if everything's working, but no, I think it definitely adds value. Bathroom and kitchen for sure.
Yep. Those are the big ones, aren't they? I like how you said, it was curious how you said, like, I have to like it, but my mind was going like, okay, somebody goes through and they're like, well, remodeling the kitchen, I'm not going to pay for that to be done, but I'll just do it myself. We've seen those jobs, and we've seen, I mean, obviously there are people that can do it and they can do a tremendous job, but we've also seen somebody try and do their own remodeling, and it's obvious, to a professional who's seen both sides of that. I'm sure you've walked into plenty of houses and been like, oh no, like, they painted and they put up some new crown molding, but yikes.
Right.
So you probably have to, again, take a whole nother step. You can't just be like, well, apples to oranges here, so it's remodeled. It's got to be remodeled in a certain fashion too.
Right. And the way the appraisal reports are written is very confusing for a reader. We have all these codes we have to use, C1, C2, C3. That's the condition rating. So C1 means it is brand new, it's never been lived in. C2 is it's like new. So that would be a flipped house. C3 is average. But what does the gamut of average mean? Like that's in the eyes of the beholder, really. Like this house that I'm sitting in had brand new kitchen in 2014, new baths, and I had an appraiser come out and he called it C4, which means it needs work. Well, that's my interpretation of what C4 means. So it's really hard to, not like you just said, Nathan, like no kitchen remodels or none of them are exactly the same. So I have to dive deeper and to be like, what's the actual money in here that a buyer would see and want to pay for?
Yeah. The value, like you said, it's
Right.
the value. It's not wholly perceived by one person. It's reality. So Did somebody really come through and give you a C4 on your kitchen?
Oh yeah.
Did you fight them? Was there a fist fight?
No. And to be fair, what I did first is I looked up all the comparables, and because she called them C4s as well, and they were C3s. So as long as she wasn't calling mine a C4 and them a C3 and making that adjustment that mine sucked and theirs didn't, And that's the bad thing about the appraisal realm in the real estate market is that it's everybody's professional opinion. And there are a lot of appraisals I have seen that I'm really scratching my head at, that I'm just like, this makes zero sense and this should have been looked at. And I help people with reviews for that reason too. You just have to know your market. That's one thing you should tell your buyers. Go stay local when you lend. It's so very important to stay local. Otherwise, they're going to send out some appraiser from Timbuktu who doesn't know a thing that drove an hour and a half to get here.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say right there that is huge, and that was one of the things I learned years ago in my career. I actually had a really seasoned agent over in South Bend counter one of our offers, and one of the things he countered back was that the appraiser has to be a resident of St. Joe County, because that's where the house was, and a member of the South Bend Board of Realtors. And I wrote him back and I said, I don't think you can do that. You can't say who we want to appraise the home. And he said, but there are conditions that you can put in there. And I have gone around with lenders since then, because I've used that so many times since then. Because when somebody comes to me with a pre-approval from some mysterious online lender, again, no names, and you're like, oh my goodness, I've seen these guys before and I've had nothing but headaches and trouble with them. That is one way to kind of get through that. Force them to use someone local who understands our market, who understands what the comps are actually looking like, because they've been in most of them and they at least understand what the people in this area value.
So you're allowed to do that?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's good to know.
I
So
checked with legal on that one. Yeah.
what I've been told as well, you
Mm.
can't request who your appraiser is,
Right.
but you can reject who your appraiser is.
Correct. Yep.
So
you can actually do that.
Interesting.
If you find out that so-and-so's coming, you can call your friend Kelly, who's an appraiser. I'm just kidding. But if you don't like the person, you can say, nope, reassign it. I don't want to be this person, at least.
Yep.
I think
Had
you
to
should
do
have
that
some
before too.
control over
Yeah.
that.
We've had that, unfortunately, with some certain loan packages. You don't do VA loans, right?
Mm-mm.
So VA is Veterans Administration. There's a huge stigma that's been an issue for a long time in real estate, and we're getting a little off chart here, so I try not to let me go too far with this. But basically, there was a very small handful of VA lenders, and they had a very difficult time coming up with market values. To the point where we would sometimes see them just throw up their hands, declare what's called the Tidewater Initiative, which is to say, we can't find any comparables that we feel comfortable using, so we're done. And we're just not going to basically complete the appraisal process. Then they come back to the realtors and they're like, hey, if you have some comps, send them in. But it's still up to them if they feel comfortable using them or not. And the parameters of what they can use are more narrow. I think FHA, the Federal Housing Authority, I think they have some of those parameters too, where they really want it to be a tight geographic area. They don't want you pulling, bi-level homes and comping them out against ranches. So there's other things in there too, where you guys have your hands tied a little bit, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always been curious about this one. And Nate, I'm going to steal from you on this because I wanted to make sure we hit it. This is one of Nate's questions, but just when you're comparing similar homes, and obviously they're not all 3-bed, 2-baths, what kind of adjustments do you make for a finished basement, or even more important to me, like an extra bedroom in the basement?
Okay, so the first thing I would say, because I have a lot of realtors that'll call me or text me and say, hey, what are you going to give for this, right? And it depends on the price range of the house.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a little bungalow, downtown Goshen, something that's maybe worth 150, and you've got a small bedroom down there with an egress window, I'm going to give that at the very most $8,000 with an egress, and a family room anywhere between 6 and 25. Again, if you're talking about a $500,000 home, these are large rooms, they're professionally done, and it's all just a percentage of the overall value, really. So family room, anywhere between 8 and 25. But so you have to just kind of gauge what price range, what kind of, like, the overall quality of the house in general and the workmanship that went into it.
Yeah.
But that is one of the things that a homeowner can do to significantly raise the value of their house, because you're adding living area. It's just huge. I mean, if I know what you were saying about do it yourself, that's one place where you can probably do that and really increase the value. That, and if you're good at tiling, put a backsplash up. Those little small updates don't cost a lot of money, but they go a long way.
Yep. Instead of doing the whole granite countertops in the kitchen, doing some of those things makes a big difference too. Just modernizing, maybe doing a little bit new hardware on the doors and drawers, resurfacing instead of replacing.
Faucets.
Those are definitely a lot of the things that I talk to people about when they're getting ready and they want to know what to do. Shifting gears a little bit, I think we covered some really great material there, and thank you so much. Your expertise is massive in that area. But I wanted to talk a little bit about market trends, maybe some common challenges that you see. So obviously right now we're seeing market fluctuations. They've stabilized here a little bit, but last year, especially when we started to see interest rates climb to levels that we hadn't seen in a long time, to those, which maybe then creates, inventory issues. How much would that affect your home appraisal process? Do you look at interest rates and you're like, well, this has some bearing, or just not at all?
That's a tricky one. Indirectly, it has bearing, but otherwise, no. I have no reason to look at what an interest rate is, except for see how it affects the market. Because it does, of course.
Right.
I just see the back end of it, right? I see the slowing of sales. I see, all of that. It does. Pretty much what happens is when it starts coming down the pipes and I have orders coming in left and right, I'm like, the interest rates have gone down, It's just, there's more of them. But, and like what happened last year when the interest rates were so high, but it did what it needed to do, which was stop the
Mhm.
appreciation that was going on so fast.
Yeah.
I'm so happy we didn't bottom out. Like I saw one of the script questions was, have you ever been just stunned by what a price was, either higher or lower, right? And during that appreciation, I remember looking at the purchase price. A lot of times I do not look at the purchase price at all before I even get into an inspection, because I'm not making any kind of biased judgment anyway, but I go into it with a fresh brain. But I would pull up sometimes or walk through a property and then get back and look at the purchase price. And I'd think, you've got to be insane. Are you insane? Who are these people? And I think this is how this is going to turn out. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this 20 years. And then I pull comps and I'm like, well, what do you know? It's there. I don't know what happened, but just like that, it was that fast.
Yeah.
That appreciation was full on. So
it was wacky for a while there, wasn't it? It was like 5% a month, it seemed like for a little while there. We'd see people live in a home for 6 months, turn around and sell it for 50 grand more than they just paid for it. And just like you, then I'm getting called by the neighbor, we want to sell our house too. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous what you're asking. And then actually the value is there.
Right.
So yeah, the rising of the interest rates, obviously nobody loves that. Except if you're a saver, I guess it's a good thing. But that was a tough spot, but I think it was necessary as well, because we had to really hit the brakes, and it worked. I think that was one of the times they kind of got it right. Now it'd be fun if they released them a little bit, but we're getting inflation data back. That's not what we want. So probably rates are not going to go down. They certainly didn't go down this last time, and they're saying there might be one.
Not terrible.
No, they're not.
Only the younger generation that's never seen anything over 5 that's off about it.
Yep.
My first home, I paid 7%, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled at that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Historical trends say that we've got rates right about where they should be right now, and so we're starting to see, as far as Nate and I work with a lot of different people, we're starting to see more and more people come back and just find that comfort that, hey, these rates are okay. If they do go down, fantastic, we can refinance.
Right.
But if you want to buy the house and you've got reasons to move, then you need to just go ahead and do it. The other obvious reality, and you kind of hinted at this, Kelly, was that if rates do go back down, especially if they were somehow to go back down sharply, it's just going to spur monumental buying again. And that home that you didn't buy right now at 6.5% is going to be worth $30,000, $40,000 more next year if rates go down to 5 or 5.5 or whatever it may be. So don't wait. Give yourself the benefit of realizing that appreciation and value over the next 12 months, 13 months, whatever it is.
Isn't that what they say? Marry the house, date the rate.
That's it. Yeah.
It's really cute, and it's 100% true.
I don't know who thought that up, but they need an award. Somebody needs
That's right.
the award. That should be a thing. You kind of hit some of the other stuff that I really want to touch on in this section, so I think we're probably okay skipping down. How are we doing on time, Nate? Because I'm a big talker.
We're
getting there.
Yeah, 23 minutes in. Yep.
Okay, we try and keep them around 30 minutes max. So yeah, Kelly likes to talk almost as much as I do. So
I feel like I've just been blurbering on, and I look like the girl from Scooby Doo.
Easy, Velma. You take it easy.
Velma! Oh no. It's very cold here, so.
Oh man,
whatever you got to tell yourself, man.
Oh man.
As far as I did want to have a section here where we can talk a little bit about some tips, and I think you already kind of gave those tips, but is there anything else front of mind that sellers can do maybe to help their home appraise at the highest potential value?
I will say, first of all, don't need to clean it. Everybody thinks it has to be clean. I will say this, I will be able to tell whether you maintain and clean your home on a regular basis or not. Yeah. You can't hide how you treat your home from me. So, but honestly, update what you can and take care of the deferred maintenance, obviously. You want to pass all your health and safety things. It's evident that you'll care, but there's so many things that you really can't do. I'm looking at the kind of windows, the kind of floors, your square footage, and your amenities. So, just relax and let me do it and try not to sweat,
Well, isn't it true, though, that when you're doing an appraisal and the homeowner's there, you want them to follow you around and point things out?
No, please. I've had so many times where someone will be like, here, let me show you the bathroom. And then they step into the bathroom and they're like, here it is. I'm like, that's great. Can you
Thanks.
please move so I can see it and take a picture of it? And I get it. People are nervous. They don't know what to expect.
Mhm.
But yeah, we have definitely accumulated some stories about my ex-husband. But he's an appraiser, and he walked in on someone using the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like he got to the house, and she was like, "Yeah, go ahead, take a look, go up." He just assumed she was alone, and he opened a door, and her husband was sitting on the toilet.
Oh no!
Trying to play his Wordle, and
Yes.
here he's interrupted by Mark.
Right.
Terrible.
Right. So luckily
Oh my
that kind of
gosh.
stuff hasn't happened. But put your dogs away too, please.
Yeah.
Appraisers don't like that. They get jumped on and whatever. But honestly, just let them do their thing. I always tell somebody, I ask them right away, what improvements have you made? You can continue to think about them and let me know. And then I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough. I'm going to take pictures, make some notes, do some measuring, and then come back through. And if you have things you really want to show me, you can show them to me as well. But if I have someone following me around and I'm trying to make a conversation, I'm more likely to miss something. And I don't want to do that, especially on those big houses. So, yeah.
Well, I do try and inform my clients, just so you know. I'm like, hey, the appraiser will be there. Let them in if you're there, and then leave them alone. And
Yeah.
be helpful. If they need things moved or whatnot, be ready to move things, but make sure they have access to all areas. You got to pop your head up in the attic, right? And you got to at least check out the crawl space real quick.
FHA only and USDA.
Right.
Luckily not conventional, but yeah.
Don't even have to look in the attic on conventional?
No.
Oh, see, I learned something new today.
All right.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Nate, did you have anything else that you wanted to check out in that section?
Let me see here.
Do you want to talk about outbuildings or
Well,
anything like that?
so one real quick, just in this section. So is there anything homeowners can do to challenge a low appraisal if they feel it's inaccurate?
Okay.
Maybe you touched on this. I don't think you did, but.
No, not really. So I guess every appraiser is different, but I always tell a lender or a realtor or a homeowner, I'm a human being. I can make mistakes, obviously. The only thing, though, I'm really going to have you do is give me a sale that's not in there. So that's the thing. If I miss data, that's fine. If you want to question an adjustment, I'll explain how I came up with it, but I'm not going to argue that it's wrong, But I will say I sometimes miss data. I miss a sale because it's sold for $2 over, my range or something like that. But yeah, and I think most appraisers are reasonable and be like, yeah, if a borrower, this is typically what happens though, a borrower will say, I know the house across the street, or that maybe more the seller, I've sold for this amount, and I look it up and know it was listed for that amount. It did not sell for that amount. Like I'm 99.5% of the time, I'm 100% right. Or I'll put in their sale that they asked me to put in and it comes in lower. I'm like, see, you don't want that in there.
Yeah. Yeah. People always know best, right? About everything until they don't. So
Right.
I like your 60% of the time. It works 100% of the time.
Right.
Oh man. All right. Well, I do want to keep us under our time. We do have some other things. We might have to have you back on, Kelly, because you've obviously got tremendous knowledge in this area. You're fun and easy to talk to.
What?
You're
That's
really
terrible.
And you look like Velma. So, yeah.
I'm not going to look like Velma next time. That's for sure.
Next time, dress like Shaggy. Yeah.
Right.
I'll be Shaggy. Nate can be Fred.
That's right.
And then,
Maybe
yeah,
we'll
you
do it
pick
in the
whatever
summer.
you want.
Yeah.
I'll be the swamp monster too.
Right.
Go back and forth. All right, guys. Well, hey, yeah, we do want to wrap it up. Really, honestly, Kel, I might have you back on at some point because I want to hear some more of your stories. And then there's also some myths and stuff that I want to get into about like what to do. We covered some of them, like don't follow your guy around. Real quick, though, if you could tell us, because you did kind of mention it, other than the house itself, there's land to be considered and there's potentially outbuildings to be considered. Those are a part of the appraisal process, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
The only outbuildings we don't consider are ones that are not on a permanent foundation or small, like your 8x10 shed. It's just not, it's considered personal property. We don't consider hot tubs, anything you can pick up and move, whether you plan to or not, The land, of course, is very, very important. Not only does it follow into the location, but the size, the acreage. Now, there is a thing of law of diminished returns where the more acreage you have, the least amount of money per acre it's going to be worth.
Right.
But maybe we can get into that again.
We might have to. We might. I think I was about to come up with like 8 more questions based on what you just said. So we better not. We better not. Kelly, thank you. Honestly, this has been fantastic. Before we wrap it up, is there just one other piece of advice that you want to give to homeowners who are maybe needing to better understand the appraisal process? Anything that pops into mind?
I mean, just if you love your home, it'll be evident, and try not to put every money you put into it to see that on the report. Just know that this is an investment and you're not always going to get everything you put into it. And try not to sweat it also, especially if you don't need that much of a loan, if it's a refinance and you only need like, $20,000. Don't be offended if it didn't come in at 750, it came in at 725 or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? We're not perfect, but we're doing our best. I am anyway.
That's right.
That's right. And real quick, if any of our listeners need an appraisal or have more questions, how can they get in touch with you?
You can email me. Oh my gosh, I don't know what these emails are going to be now. My email is office@kellyappraisals.com. So if you could probably put graphics up, right? Because you're all fancy like that.
There we are. Now we've got it. Let's work together, social media, and let's get her canceled. Got my appraisal 5 years ago. Get her.
No Scooby Doo girl. We don't like Scooby Doo girl.
Velma!
Oh man.
You meddling kids. Tell you what. Kelly, man, thanks again for joining us, sharing your expertise, and to our listeners, we hope you guys found this very valuable.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to the Realty Rundown for more real estate insights and follow us on social media for updates and upcoming episodes.
That's right. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Realty Rundown with the Nick Wise team. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, Nick knows, get wise replies. We'll see you guys next time.
That's right. See you guys.